Well, good Monday to you. How are you? Kind of reminds me of Good Morning Vietnam. Boy, I miss Robin Williams. He was, ah, you know, yeah, there's just sometimes that you look back but I trust that his journey is continuing and, you know, I hope to meet him. I hope to meet a lot of people. It's just that we just don't know. There is so much that makes up us as individuals, you know, your core beliefs, those things that you only say to the other yous. And there are many other yous. Uh, the older you get, you find out the past yous have died. They no longer exist. That's the interesting thing about the human life experience. So much of what we will bet our lives on as truth is not the truth. It just isn't. No way. In fact, I just got a book. Give me one second. And I can't make any recommendations on it. I just got it. I just started reading it. And it's called Seeing Through the Illusion. What I've just read already, folks, everything about us is an illusion. I've done enough videos that get into what is the mind? How does the mind define your mind? You can't even define your soul. And here's the challenge: you can't even prove your existence. So, what a great segue into a topic that I've been seeing on other creator channels. Um, I've seen at this time of year, the subject seems to come up because just the way our cultures are. And today we're going to talk about Lucifer. In fact, you could actually title this whole program, Who is Lucifer? Now, just for reference, because I think it's important that when you deal in these types of subject matters that you go, okay, so what is the foundation of the argument and what evidence are you going to prove or what are you going to build your case upon? So we're going to be using, so the Bible. This one here is the King James and Amplified. But if I had to, we could always use the Sefer. You know, they they did a they did a good job in trying to correct the erroneous errors that are in the Bible, the King James, and the numerous other translations. But I can tell you, yeah, not not that good. And if I want to get probably one of the best in literal translations, um, definitely would recommend the Sacred Scriptures, the Bethel edition. I can say, uh, as I got the recommendation from a linguist, they said that this is one of the most accurate translations from Hebrew into modern day English, because the whole thing is that what we use today literally is not what they used. Well, in fact, you have to the whole thing is again, it's a mind coitus. Remember that. Religion is a mind coitus. But getting back to the point, there was a culture that was robbed, stolen from, called the Jews, and they were probably, the best word I can use is raped. They were raped of their religion, of their beliefs, of their culture. Um, and then the bizarre thing about it is that now, today, nearly 2,000 years later, the weirdness is that that which was taken from them has now become adaptive on a worldwide basis, and that's a unique thing. That's the boomerang effect, is that when you start meddling into these type of things, they have a tendency to come back on you. I used to call it pissing in the wind. Um, and I was at a Crosby, Stills, and Nash concert, and Young was not there. But I still remember Stephen Stills just talking about the fact that, you know what, you go out and you purposely try to coitus someone, to mess with them, to bring harm to them. You write a comment that you know is snide and hurtful. He says, man, that's like pissing in the wind. And ain't it the truth? So we're talking about Lucifer. And I put together a little presentation that we will use, and then I will come back on at the end of it. So let's hold on one second here. All right. So I want to start right from the get-go. This was taken from, I think it's Webster's. Lucifer's, the definition, is a name that, according to dictionaries of the English language, refer to the devil, Satan, or to the planet Venus when appearing as the morning star. In the first sense, the name is the rendering of the Hebrew word, and they give Isaiah 14:12, but this is where the blatant lie is, given in the King James Version. This is a blatant lie to deceive. Number one, the word Lucifer does not exist in the Hebraic word. There is no word for it. As to Isaiah 14:12, well, you've got to have to say this. Here's the deal. That was St. Jerome that did that, folks. Yeah, and I call it saint just simply because for historical purposes, again, Isaiah 14:12, that was inserted about the 5th century. So there is no being or creature that has ever been called Lucifer. Does not exist. Isaiah was altered and changed by Jerome the early 5th century. He inserted the word Lucifer. It was not there originally. This man is a forager and an alter of another culture's documents. And isn't that the arrogance that we have found about so many religions? Is that they consider themselves above all the rest, no matter which one it is. That's the problem with religion. But we're going to stay on Lucifer because, folks, this is a made up concept. And you're going to see how it's so embedded in most people, a belief that has no foundation of existence. None. Yet, it dominates the fears of almost every human. And why? That's the question. The name Lucifer is not in the Hebrew, it's not in the Egyptian, not in the Greek, or any other language or culture. Why is that? Ask yourself. But yet, this avatar has as much power, apparently, as God himself. Yeah, this is the mind coitus. It gets weirder, doesn't it? So now you have to separate the gold from the pyrite. Lucifer is not Satan, and Satan is not equal to Lucifer. It's just not. Today, if you are in a particular denomination of religious thought, the books that you will find are always going to be tainted in that perspective. And it's no matter what that belief system is. Virtually all the books are written to help support, enhance, and validate the belief. But this one here, this one, folks, and I'm going to show you to it, is made up. So who is Lucifer? Because it's not Satan, and I'm going to show you why. Because when you see this, then you're going to know why they altered or forged ancient texts. They had to. Otherwise, the belief system cannot stand. You have to create the antithesis of the deity. Otherwise, the deity has no reason to exist. Has to have an enemy. Otherwise, then you've got a whole bunch of problems. Because if there isn't the antithesis of the personality, the virtues, the traits, the characteristics, the character of the deity, then absent that, then the deity is incompetent or not as powerful as one has been led to believe all of their life. So why do this? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. It was designed to enslave, dominate, control, force to worship false gods. The only way you can do that is that you eliminate all other documents, beliefs, truths. You burn them. And then you murder the innocent humans and blame it on a made-up concept, the alter ego. Because you see, it then shields the so-called God from any responsibility for the evil. He has no control over that. And it is beyond us to either question or to try to reason the purpose of allowing its alter ego to exist. And this is what it was, folks. Still is. dominates all of our fears. It's instilled in us almost from the point of where cognitive reasoning takes over the child. The question really becomes how much more human blood is going to be sacrificed on these altars of worship to false gods? When will humanity awake? Lucifer is a made up concept by the Christian religion that has been adapted into virtually all other cultures. Many of the cultures are absent of the creature's name. It's always the balance. There has to be a balance, positive, negative. But the concept is by the Christian religion, there is no such angel, creature, or being named Lucifer. It was designed to capture your thoughts, make you become fearful of an unseen. It's a made up story that has no foundation in reality. And I extend an open invitation to anyone who can prove me wrong and bring solid proof of this creature's existence. I challenge you. I'll give you an open mic. This creature, Lucifer, does not exist. They had to make the story up. Otherwise, the story does not hold together. It loses its cohesiveness. Because if there is no antithesis, then the other side would basically be unopposed and would have completed the mission thousands of years ago, if the story ever existed. So that leaves us with Satan. Now, the enslavers used the story to enslave the minds of 1,000 generations. And because of that, it is now today real. It has energy that we feed it. And the illusion is mind-boggling. Because you see, it doesn't take that many generations to erase the past and replace it with a new one. So my question to you is, really? 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 Come on, folks. So let's talk about it. I got the Bibles here. So where does Satan show first up? People will tell you, bottom line, well, he shows up in Genesis 3. Really? Because that's not how the Hebraic text goes. You, if you believe that it shows up the first time in Genesis 3, and let's just read it. I think that's the best thing we can do here, right? So I'm going to use the Bethel. And it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, Has Elohim said, You shall not eat of any of the, and this says tree, of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, Isn't this odd now? Gee, Jeff Doherty, the Christian whistleblower. You see, your Bible is wrong. It's not God, the God that you're thinking of. But let's continue with what is considered by linguists and translators as the most accurate that you could get. And by the way, you can't get that accurate with particularly ancient Hebraic language. It's like the ancient Greek. It's no longer existed. It's not even spoken. And the translations to now would be considered contaminated, which most are. But let us continue. Elohim has said, You shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto woman, You shall not surely die, for Elohim knows that in the day that you eat it, then your eyes shall be open, and then you shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw the tree that was good for food, and we know the story, she went ahead and ate it. Now, excuse me, what we have here is a real interesting problem that you probably have never realized. So it talks about when Yahweh Elohim, boy, if you've never done a study on the different gods of Genesis, you need to. My point is to this: when Yahweh Elohim, and to those of you who are good word studies, you know what I'm speaking of, when he confronted both the man and the woman, the serpent was still there. But the Elohim, the Yahweh Elohim, never called the serpent by name. Why? Everything that this deity does, he calls by name. There's no ambiguity. There's no uncertainty. There's no room for interpretation. If the Yahweh Elohim speaks to something, he's going to speak to it with what it is. It says a serpent. Now, I'm going to read you something, but I bet you've never actually considered. And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me. Do you know what the word beguiled means? It means to be seduced totally, sexually, mentally, physically, spiritually. Beguiled. Old word, no longer used in modern English. And I did eat. And Yahweh Elohim said unto the serpent. Now, listen, if this was Lucifer or this was Satan, he would have addressed as such. He said, serpent. Because you have done this, cursed are you. And he went on above all the cattle, above every beast. Now, I found this one really interesting. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. You can only deduct from that, the seed of the two had already been mixed. Now that gets into a whole other subject. All right. So we go through Genesis, we go through Exodus, we go through Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. We don't have anything about Satan. And we got other deities. Got Moloch, and he's everywhere, but his name's not Satan. So let's go to, I guess if you want to do the chronology correctly, go to the book of Job. Because Job is a mystery. Many have said Job really doesn't belong technically in the Bible because there's no way of dating the book of Job. It is one of these documents that, well, it's weird. So let's just read this. The first time we get any knowledge of a Satan, of anything called Satan, is verse 6, 1:6. I want to make sure that I got this so you can hear it. Now it came to pass on the day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh. Are some of you picking this up? Yeah. Uh-huh. That Satan also came among them. And Yahweh said to Satan, now it's not Yahweh Elohim. Read it. I mean, listen, they're very, you have to understand sentence and word structure. It's very important. And Yahweh said to Satan, from where have you come? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down in it. Did anyone catch of that? He didn't say, I love this. Not on the earth, in the earth. I'll read it again. From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. Not on it, in it. And Yahweh said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? All right. Then we get in the discussion, and he says, for there is no one like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fears Elohim. Not Yahweh Elohim. Folks, you got to really get the cast of characters here. Anyway, so that's like the first time we ever hear of Satan. Now, if this predated Genesis, I think the Yahweh Elohim would have known who the serpent was. And he would called him as such. There would have been none of this ambiguity in any of this. Never found that to be the case. And then in chapter 2, it says in verse 1, and then it came to pass on the day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, that Satan came also among them to present himself before Yahweh. Folks, the Christian New Testament version does not fit here. Oh, they have tried and tried. I have got books. I mean, more books. What do you want to go on? You want to get the lost of things of the lost worlds of Adam and Eve, the fallen angels. We got the Watchers. We got the power of the dragon. I have got books and books and books. And then when you get your copy of the demonology of King James, it goes on and they try to convince you because they know the story doesn't work. They know it. And it doesn't take all that much digging. You have to go outside of the required reading list that they say that you are to go and look for. But the story in Job cannot be this Satan, this devil that everybody talks about. You know, I say this, the Christian church gave Satan a promotion. Because nothing implies that that creature, that sons of Elohim, and Satan came to present himself. How the hell does that work? If you got this guy that is the tempter of the world that required a savior to be saved from, well, why wasn't he pulling this crap that would have been throughout the stolen beliefs of an ancient culture that have been regurgitated into the belief system today? Why? What did they get a playbook here? And the Yahweh Elohim said, all right, Satan, listen, now you and I are buds, you know, but they don't need to know that. We got to change the story up here, you know, because yeah, the first part, it ran out. I got to come up with a new thing. You know, these humans, they get bored really easy. So we got to come up with a new thing. So here's the deal. I mean, because that's the only kind of conclusion you're left with. I mean, if this is the cat that committed the original sin and the God, no sin can stand before him, how the hell did he get before him then? I mean, seriously, this is nuts. I mean, that's all it is. It is such a mind coitus that today people will argue and try to show you why Satan exists in the construct, in the paradigm of a Christian belief system. And the Christian belief system, listen, is no different than Islam. I mean, these are all very recent religions. So, what does that leave us with? Someone says, well, they don't like leaving a void. Well, you know, sometimes you have to move out the old in order to move in the new. And here's the deal. We've got to break out of this. If we're ever going to be free as a species, we've got to rise above these creative constructs, created beliefs that are predicated and built upon no no evidence whatsoever. And to 1,000 generations, it's so hard to break free of it, to get it filtered out of you completely. It's virtually almost impossible, no matter how hard you try, because you're reminded of it, particularly those that are sensitive, that have a strong spiritual desire. You know, there's a lot of us like that. And the reason why that's so highly prized by the religions is because it's powerful. Past cultures would call it magic. And by all definitions, it is magic. It's magic is the fact that we're learning that so much of our environment is created by us. And when we get this worldwide, when it finally permeates the conscious minds and then the subconscious, the superconscious will awaken and validate the fact that we, if humanity ever got together, you see, right now, I don't know if that's possible. So many of us have been contaminated. I mean, and what you end up finding yourself having to do is decontaminate yourself. And in that process, it's fraught with landmines all over the place. I mean, you want to get it out, but damn, it's got a way of creeping back in. And that's because we don't understand all the time what you can do in 2,000 years. Now, I want to get back to the story that I just read to you. Out of more of the accurate, you see how the Hebrew really brings it out differently? So the serpent, it's not Satan. The seed had already been mixed. Otherwise, the Yahweh Elohim would have never brought that out. So the semen, the egg, there was intercourse. Sperm was injected. Now, did the woman, and by the way, the Elohim never called her by name. He said the woman. So, is it possible that this sprung a hybrid race? Potentially reptilian? Because the creature that was in the garden is not the one we see today. There was a forced evolutionary change upon that species. Oh crap, where did we see that happen before? I mean, this Yahweh, Elohim, means he's an Elohim. He sits in the councils of it, but he's a Yahweh. So there was something that was immediately done to that species. Now, we have no idea what that species looked like prior to this event. Now, that's assuming that this story is even true. It may be all just a metaphor. And if it's a metaphor, then you got real problems. Not really. You got probably more answers than you got problems, because now we've got a real problem here, because it would appear that there was a purposeful removal of knowledge here. Call it occult, occultism. Lilith was removed. We have two different creation stories. Now we've got in the second creation story, because you see, most people forget the 6-day people. Yeah, that wasn't Adam. That wasn't it wasn't Lilith. They didn't have the distinctiveness of the spirit. Probably had a soul, but the 6-day people are gone. And I'm speaking specifically of Genesis 1:26. One of the books that I think I have over here. Well, it looks like I do. I know I do. Yeah. This is a good book. I use this a lot. It's a great reference by Gary Wayne. It's the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Um, it's actually a really good book. I like how he brings out that there's not enough attention given in this period of time. I mean, there is some fantastic things going on. So, going a little longer than I intended to. But to recap here, who is Lucifer? How did Satan get a promotion? Are we missing something strategic in the fact that if you take the book of Job, 1:6 through 9, and then 2:1, it says specifically Satan was walking in the earth, not on it, in it. Is there a whole different race, civilization, culture, reality that us on the surface, we really are the drudge, you know, the bottom of the barrel. It has been said that this world that exists within our world is a place of advanced technology, different type of beings. So folks, I'm going to leave it with this. Believe whatever you want. It's your life, your journey. But explain to me how the Satan is now this huge antithesis of the Christ. Would he have not have been that from the very beginning? I mean, of his rebellion? How would he have the privilege to go before God? Oh, that's right. That's not God. It's a Yahweh who is an Elohim, not the creator. No, it's not. So, who made up who? All right, folks, be good to yourselves. And that means be good to your thoughts, be good to your mind, and be good to your soul. All right, we'll talk soon.